Welcome everyone to Game Club, November 16th, 2025. Uh, as you all know, we are covering Signalis, the indie horror survival, very Japanese influence. So I guess to sort of kick it off, did anyone want to start? I guess sharing their most interesting thing about their playthrough? Or I guess let's start off a little softer. What's the most what game mechanic in Signalis stands out to you the most that makes it stand apart from anything else you've played, similar to like Resident Evil or like Silent Hill?
Yeah, good question. I feel like I don't know if it's like standout or is like super unique, but the thing that set the pace with like my entire playthrough in this game was the inventory limitation, the fact that you could only have six things with you at any given point, and ammo and weapons. A lot of times if you have like spare ammo, that's separate. It turned into a real challenge juggling that inventory. Especially with you get a little bit later into the game and you have like a flashlight or like stun rods that you can use, and those take up extra slots, and they're also like secondary equips. Um, so I felt like I was constantly juggling between things. It's like I was going out from a save room, and like trying to make like decisions like, do I carry these key items with me which I don't know if I'm going to use yet, or do I bring in extra guns or extra health? And you have six slots, but like really you have like three or four slots because two of them are going to be reserved for like a main weapon and maybe a secondary like the flashlight. Um, but I think I really that drove like the whole game for me.
All right, did anyone else have anything to add on top of that?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say this game really has anything unique to it. Um it's kind of just really refined, I would say, more so. I don't think it's reinventing the wheel. It's just it has a very nice, shiny, polished wheel. I guess what's kind of unique compared to the survival horror games I've played is the little bit of enemy like autonomy outside of the direct room you're in, because I know like the patterns and stuff still apply when you like leave a room, which can make it interesting. I guess it makes it more of a threat because they are the enemies in the game, at least so far that I've come across. They're usually pretty um simple. They don't have a high range of like hearing or visibility unless you have the flashlight on, and stuff like that. But the fact that if you do, you know, aggro them and you just try to, oh, I'll just go into the next room and everything will be a-okay, and then you aggro the people in the other room, then you're kind of messed up because they'll both be waiting for you. I've come into that before, or it's like, oop, I just came into the vision of this other thing and I already got caught in the other room, so I guess I got to pick which one I want to fight or like go through and stuff like that. So that was kind of unique that I don't, at the very least, I don't recall happening often in other games I've played, which does add a nice little bit of pseudo realism and challenge.
Yeah, like even again, I can't remember if this is something that happens in other games, but this is one of the first games where I've really noticed it. Like you were saying, where you leave a room and if you come back to it, it's not like all of the enemies just reset. So you can aggro enemies in one room, go to another room, aggro other enemies, and then you're sort of stuck, rock in a hard place there. And I found a couple of times that like I would go into a room, the enemies would end up into like not a good position, like they'd all be crowded right around the door, and so I'd have to find an alternate route around that room or something to get to wherever I wanted to go. I guided how I moved through the game in a really interesting way.
That's neat.
Okay.
Also
And
hear about it
welcome
from my
to
audio setup.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to anyone else who might have joined in late. We're just discussing about any sort of game mechanics or really anything this game does that makes it stand out from the rest of similar genre games. So if anyone had any other comments on top of what Deontay and Scott had said, please feel free to jump in. If not, then I have another set of questions I'd like to ask.
I don't know if this was said because I just joined, but I really liked the style. It's like the visual style. It's giving Silent Hill, but like, I don't know, instead of it being like, it's a different type of low poly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also the UI is really clean. Like, especially for this, the UI for the weapons is really clean. That's something I saw in the trailers, and it's clean. It looks nice.
Yeah, it's really cool how like it is low poly, but it almost feels like the way that they low polyified it was less in like using lower resolution models and more in just adding like really strong aliasing to the shaders or whatever, so that everything has like that really pixely edge to it when you get up close.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, kind of speaking to that too. What was actually unique is um these moments where it's always 3D, right? But I guess it has a little bit of like if you're looking at this footage right now, the normal gameplay has this, fixed camera kind of like flat presentation, and then and those like in these like weird memory events that you go through in some points, which don't quite get those either. Maybe that'll come through at the end. 'Cause I was kind of confused of like, how did I look at this clock and now all of a sudden I'm in a completely different area, and then I get an item and I like it apparently wasn't hallucination. I actually had the item. That was weird to me. But in those sequences, it kind of takes on that first person perspective, and it feels, I don't know, a lot more 3D and stuff like that. And you get to see more of the like geometry of the levels and stuff like that. It kind of actually reminds me of mouth washing a little bit, in those particular segments and stuff like that, which is interesting.
Yeah, okay, that first person. Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat too. I don't think
Yeah,
I've
good
seen
call out.
any of these style of games like mess around with that kind of perspective shifting stuff.
And even just in the puzzles, when you sort of go into those quick like first person moments for some of the puzzles, it like really reminded me of like Myst and some of those old like first person PC type games, which is really cool.
True. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't make a lot of gameplay notes as I was playing because there's so much story stuff, and the gameplay was mostly smooth in terms of like, oh, I was doing all these things right, cool. But I did make a note about I did the radio mechanic when you get it is pretty neat. I think that's like a key core like game mechanic that they use through like up for the rest of the game pretty much in some capacity, but it's also like there's a story element to it as well, but purely from a puzzle solving aspect of like having to use radio tunes and channels to like figure out different details and affect the world around you. That was pretty cool. Also very confusing, but
Yeah, there are definitely a few puzzles where it's like, what am I doing? What's going on? And then I remember that I have the radio and I go, oh, of course.
The one right
Yeah.
there that's on the screen right now. That shit. That fucking puzzle. I did get it eventually, but by golly. Did no one else struggle with that?
This is the reservoir puzzle, right?
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna struggle with this one, but like in that same room where they tell you how to do like what the goal of the puzzle is, there's like a note that tells you exactly the steps to take to do the puzzle. I didn't
Yeah,
get. I was
it's
surprised
cheating.
that yeah, it just
Can't be
gives you the
cheating over
answer.
here. Well, I figured that's because of how hard it is. I feel like probably from like play testing, they was like, oh shit, people
Yeah.
really ain't getting past this, are they? I guess we should just have the option for the people. I got to a point where I was just like, yeah, I was gonna like let me read it. First I read it and I was like, oh, this is the solution. Fuck that. And then
Yeah.
I was trying to do it, and then I think I spent maybe quite literally an hour or close to it. And I was
Oh
like,
man.
I'm still trying to, and this is yesterday, mind you. I'm still trying to beat
Yeah.
this damn game ahead of this discussion. I gotta move on. And
Yeah.
I watched halfway through a video, and then I realized one of the keys to get up to 900 in the reservoir A. And once that happened, I was able to get
Mm.
it. I actually even afterwards I hit up one of my friends that is like a higher education addict. He has like multiple doctorates, and one of them is in math. And I was like, "Hey, look, bro, I'm gonna show you this premise here. Can you like solve it? Am I that dumb where like you could just like solve this instantly?" But even he was like, "Yeah, I need some more information." Or he like kept asking questions. His brain was a little boggled. So I was like, "All right, I feel better already."
Yeah.
Time sync. Damn.
That's kind of
Mm.
literally, yeah, because it's kind of like the sync. Yes.
hmm
Probably why it took
That's
you
wild.
guys almost 10 hours to beat this game.
I
Say that again?
well over 10 hours.
I said no wonder it took you guys almost 10 hours to beat this game because
What
Yeah,
is?
this
almost 10 hours. I think my final game time was like 13, and that didn't include like restarting after deaths and stuff. I'm guessing
yeah,
I'm probably close to like 15, 16 hours.
this
And
playthrough is 4 hours.
Oh my god.
my Steam right now is saying 21.5 hours. Now, granted, there's about 3 days
Can't be
straight where
right.
I tried to play this and then I
Mhm.
went to sleep because life is hard.
Mhm.
So I don't know, maybe shave off like 6 hours, but still, I'm also not done with the game.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this from going past the first boss just for those who haven't actually like made it that far, so there's no spoilers.
How far did Deontay get?
Over
I
past the
feel
boss.
like I'm in the mine, so I feel like I'm towards the end.
Okay.
You're
So
making
did you?
progress, yeah.
Yeah, because you fought the robot,
Yeah,
the big
yeah.
robot. Okay. Yeah, that's the first boss. Okay.
I have not fought a secondary boss, although I
Got it.
consider one of the rooms in the I don't know this. So after you get pushed down and you're in the other spot, there's one room. It's a star room. That's what it says on the map. That
Yeah, the
is like
special
it's
room.
dark and
Yeah.
there's like 5 enemies in there, and it pissed me
Mhm.
off at how hard it was. And then I come to find out I didn't even have to go in that room. You go through all this shit. There's another room that you can go down into, and all is there is another fucking replicant. I was like, I don't care about you growing some
Yeah,
damn mushrooms and shit. I did all this to see some glowing mushrooms.
yeah. I
I
think the
was
star
mad.
map is like it's like a hint to a puzzle, but you can probably figure it mostly out without it, or at least like brute force it.
Yeah, I felt like that course was entirely because I was getting stuck in this last place because it's like a lot of
Mm,
it was very they're all linear, but it was the through line. At least this last level that I played before the mine, it seemed like a
Mhm.
lot of spots where you have to go. Unlike other scenarios, it forced you into combat situations. Most of
mhm.
them did lead you to a key item, but then the worst room of all, when you're like, all right, I guess I just got to start blasting to get through this. The worst room of all is where it's like, JK, you don't have to do this.
They got
Yeah,
jokes apparently.
there were there were a number of times where like I was out exploring and I'd go into a room, there'd be like, however many replicants in there. And so I start blasting, get to the end of it, be like, oh, I didn't need whatever's in this room, right? It wasn't worth wasting, like all of my ammo on. And so I'd have to go reload the save and do it all over again.
Repair patch after you've let
Yeah.
off like 10 bullets.
Yep.
I
That's
guess on
funny.
that note, we can sort of pivot. I had this question. I'm not sure if this is
hmm
I
gonna
do have one comment,
translate
like
properly.
real
Oh,
quick
go
too,
ahead.
about what Deontay had mentioned, the linearity of things. Um, I did feel like at least like you mentioned it earlier, like Mist, right, Sky? Like
hmm
I couldn't play Mist. It was just too obtuse for me, right?
Yeah.
But like I think as an adventure game, because this is a narrative adventure game, right? Like it does avoid a lot of those old school tropes that made those games hard, like really hard in the past.
hmm
I think because of the linearity of it, that like once you get to a certain area, like a floor, then there's kind of like a progression that you have to take in order to get further. You have to unlock a certain room and get a certain key, but there's only so many places you can go, so you don't. it's not as easy to kind of get stuck logically for it's like, what should I do next? It's like, well, have you tried this room yet? Or are you missing a key? Like there's usually something that you're missing that you need to use to get to the next area. And I feel like it really helped a lot to just kind of keep the flow going and until you got stuck and it's like, I just got to get past this thing, you know. But I did appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I feel like because it wasn't totally linear. Like I do think you could do some puzzles in like what
In different order
in
a little
different
bit.
orders and stuff. And so you would sort of start branching out on the map and going to different places. And if you got stuck, you could always go back to the map and see like, okay, these are the rooms I've been able to get to. Here are the yellow doors telling me that like I should be able to get through this, but I haven't yet because I need some item or something. And I didn't pick this up till the end of the game, but also on the map, it gives you like little indicators if there's a puzzle in a room that you haven't solved yet. So it's pretty good about being like
Is
okay,
that the
here's the
red
progress you've
marker
made.
in the room?
It's no, it's sometimes like key items or key spots will be like outlined with like a upside down white pentagon sort of thing.
Oh,
And
Like
when
a
you're
red
done with the
hexagon.
puzzle, well, it's white. And when you're done with the puzzle, it goes from a white, like bright white pentagon to it like grays out. So you know you're done with it.
It was red for me for some reason.
Really? Okay.
Mhm.
But
But yeah, so I mean, it
got
really guides you through it, like lets you explore how you want to. And then when you need to like get a sense of what's my current state of the world, what's my current progress, what things do I need to explore, it's easy to pick it up without having to just like slowly walk through the whole map to go figure it out again.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, it helps a
I
lot.
Mhm.
wish that they did put like I've noticed that they don't tell you for the locked doors, the yellow indicators, they don't tell you what specific key that you need. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Right.
you can't tell me that part. I mean, yeah,
That
it does
yeah.
add to like I gotta memorize it, but also I don't want to memorize it. I got enemies and shit. I didn't have it too much because I started to like really be mindful of that. But I remember one
Mhm.
time I, go through the onslaught of enemies, and then I'm like, oh, this is the wrong door that I had the key for. Great.
Yep.
Especially when, this one thing that pissed me off, when you have to unlock something, you don't just
Mhm.
instantly go through the door. You have to unlock, and then there is like some like very couple seconds of cooldown where you can't go through the door. And if there's an enemy on you, because sometimes these locked doors are guarded by enemies, you're just gonna get hit.
Yep.
Especially if it's by the bigger ones, the protectors, because they do a good amount of damage. And I'm like, I can't do anything because I have to unlock the door first. And like, it's not
Yep.
like you can unlock it beforehand, right? It's like all in one go. It's not like I could be like, if you don't have the key, you can't unlock it. So then you can't be prepped. You just have to go. So that kind of pissed me off quite a few times where I'm like, just let me go through the door, please, please. And it's
Yeah.
just like, I'm gonna get smacked because, game logic.
Yeah. I do think how they set up combat was like really interesting in that regard, where like dispatching most enemies isn't hard except for the fact that you don't have a whole lot of ammo. Um, but they don't give you a lot of like leeway in terms of like if you're avoiding enemies, you've really got to avoid them. You don't just get like magic like invincibility frames because you're opening a door or because you're like doing a finishing move on another enemy. It's like you're basically vulnerable the whole time, and so you've really got to be careful with it.
So you will get the full damage just by touching them, which I was like, that's ridiculous.
Yep. Yep.
Like I've been damaged just for coming out the door because that's what their pattern was, and it's like there's
Yep.
no way for me to avoid this. How am I supposed to know?
Hmm.
but on that, I did want to ask about um, what do you guys think the underlying tonal message is when it comes to Signalis?
Mm.
Because there is a lot of narrative, there is a lot of story elements, and so usually with that there tends to be an an underlying message that's embedded into the narrative. What kind of, I guess, lesson is it trying to teach us?
Please note any
Ooh.
in-game
Ooh,
spoilers
yeah,
so I can know to dip out.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like,
yeah,
is this possible to discuss without spoilers?
No, I
yeah.
mean for
Let me
people that
think.
beat it, I feel free to, but like I'll probably just dip out temporarily if y'all get into that.
All right,
No,
I'll be
just
careful.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
we can be
based
careful.
on like the overall. You don't have to like say anything specifically, but just kind of was the general theme.
I feel like the themes that I was picking up on is like, I don't know. There's sort of like an A plot and a B plot. There are like a couple of main characters that you follow throughout, and they've got something going on there. And then there's just sort of like the story building, like dystopian element to the game, right? Where it talks about like the replicas and the gestalts, and the whole like geopolitical whatever that's going on with this, all these different planets and stuff. And on that sort of second half, it feels like a lot of what the game is talking about when it's talking about the relationship between the gestalts and the replicas is like it's like making some point about um like when you put stuff on the altar of like efficiency, when you're like efficiency is more important than everything, you start to dispose of humanity at a certain point. Like
Mm-hmm.
um a lot of the logs talk about how like the replicas are great because they're so replaceable. They're sort of indistinguishable from each other, and a lot of the uh how the world is built around these replicas is to keep them sort of very like interchangeable with each other to make them indistinguishable. And so you think that the at least I thought that like the underlying motivation there would be like, oh well, this is a cheap workforce, so of course they're disposable. It's like thinking about like assembly line robots. But then you also read other logs and the like importance on efficiency and how like the replicas have become such an integral part of society. It's also made the gestalt workers like way more disposable. Like there are logs
Mm-hmm.
that talk about like if you're on long range scouting missions and you think the mission's going to fail and there's only like one gestalt and one replica worker, the gestalt worker should sacrifice themselves and let the replica worker try to finish the mission because they've got better chances of success of doing that. So it's like at that point they have both dehumanized replicas as not actually human and totally interchangeable, and they've dehumanized gestalt workers as human but not good enough, not efficient enough. So it's it's sort of become like an entire loss of humanity at that point. There's nobody more important than achieving whatever the mission is.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah. There's a lot of yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of structure that comes through as you read the logs and figure out the nature of the gestalts versus the replicants and the trying to kind of suss out like what happened to humanity, so to speak,
Hmm.
since like no one's like a full human anymore, or at least there's a very few number of people who are
Hmm.
kind of situation. Um, and obviously the themes I couldn't help but think about near series while playing this, obviously, because it deals with similar themes, the nature of humanity, how robots and other android beings try to copy human behavior, and the nature of memories over
Hmm.
time as well, and how like memories can, I don't know, change or get construed, or how time affects memories over time. That's like a big thing that comes up in multiple spots as you continue to progress, I feel like.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, that's a really weird one, especially with like memories that are like transplanted to other people, you know.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, without
yeah,
without getting into spoiler territory, the memory angle of it is super interesting because it feels like that's trying to like sort of explain what's going on with a lot of like the weird and jarring like parts of the game that don't make a lot of sense. Why you pop between different segments, or suddenly have things that you saw in a dream or whatever. Um, so I don't know totally what it's saying yet, but it feels like there's something about like false memories, or memories bleeding between different like uh entities within the game. It's I'm not sure what it's saying, but I can tell it's saying something about it.
true.
I feel like it's
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
definitely like a
analyze the nature of the
psychological
soul
undertone.
Mm,
Mm,
mm-hmm,
mm-hmm.
because it's essentially like these replicants all have the same set of memories, I think it's already implied that like the replicants look similar to their gestalts. Like it's not like they have a completely different
Yeah.
visual aesthetic. So then, if you essentially have the same memories put into different environments, do you come out the same? Even if you have memories to call back to based on the new experiences that you have, will you end up like, similar and stuff like that, or that kind of thing? I think that's what it's trying to draw to. Like, I'm sure my guess is that like the player character, don't tell me y'all, but the player character is like looking essentially for herself. That's what I'm feeling like, or probably like, her gestalt.
He
And
doesn't know it.
yeah, or like what, yeah, because there is something for all of them that's the motif of like all the ones that are, what are they, having the degradation, they have this like longing, or they're like drawn to like someone in particular. Like all of them, they always get drawn to another person, which I'm guessing is probably themselves. Or at least if it's not themselves, then it's probably the replicant of someone significant in their gestalt's life, something like that. Because I think even like the earlier one, like Issa is looking for Erica. I think they're both replicants, but their gestalts probably had some sort of connection that transfers down to them, that kind of thing.
What do you think that has to do with themes around self-identity?
That's a good question.
Because I definitely, from what I've seen, it definitely picked up on those little tidbits of like there's something to pick up on that's deeper in regards to like who we are as individuals, or I guess in this case, who the androids are as individuals.
I think it's a form of fighting against destiny in a way, because they always talk about like, even in some of these reports of like, oh, this is how you keep this person in check. You give them a teddy bear and you let them talk about popcorn or something like that. Like, it's not exactly, but those are the type of things. Yet they're still deviating, and they usually feel this is wrong, or it's like some sort of like conflict with them, I guess, from the deviation. I don't know if that is destined to be bad or whether that's conditioned to feel bad or something like that. But I think that's kind of like the grappling, is like they are designed to follow a certain trajectory, but because they are in different environments, they don't. And then like I feel like maybe in some sort of bioengineering or just from like psychological conditioning, they feel like they should be more of a perfect copy, but then they're not. So I guess there's that kind of like internal struggle. What I don't know is, in based on this universe, if they did just be like, okay, I'm different, would that like alleviate any of their issues? But that might be the point that they're trying to tackle, is to just like as an individual, you are not your past, maybe. You're not the sum of your past is not the end all be all of who you are, and you can always choose to go down a different path and stuff like that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think touching on like the points of individuality and like persona degradation that you're talking about, it's like um they they're manufactured to be one thing. So whether changing into something else is good or bad is beside the point. It's like they aren't viewed as human, they aren't viewed as individuals. And so when they do start to develop individual tendencies, that in the game they are bad, but like when they do become individuals, it's like that's the moment where they stop being like androids or machines or workers effectively, and they start being more human. And that's the point at which like the system around them you know uh disposes of them. So I feel like the game is saying something about that, about a social system that like wants to put you in a box for the sake of efficiency, and then when you veer outside of the box, it's you achieve humanity, you achieve individualism, and that's like seen as a bad thing.
That's
Also,
a
the
good point,
footage is
Scott.
confirming Issa is actually a Gestalt, so I was wrong. I said before they were both replicants. Issa's a real
Oh,
one.
Isa.
Yeah, I think both Issa and Erica are Gestalt. I think they're sisters.
Oh yeah.
That I should be more careful. I don't think that's not a big spoiler or anything. That's like a
Yeah.
minor story beat, but I'll be more careful.
Yeah, that's kind of early game, but yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There definitely is something about that whole aspect of uh straying away from whatever box that you've been given, and that
Hmm.
being seen as bad or looked down upon by the societal standards, especially because this particular society is so uh yeah, as we like already talked about, like so focused on like the efficiency of things, but also like there's like a lot of control in this
Hmm.
particular like whole space that we're in, because like everything is being monitored at every time, right? Every room has like those video recordings and everything like kind of
Hmm.
following you around everywhere. So there's like no, it seems like there's no room for like really like freedom, and if that happens, then that gets reported kind of
Hmm.
situation. So it's like everyone's supposed to be kind of following a certain status quo in their like particular role. Um, and I have to wonder if uh like our character, I'm forgetting our character's name at the moment, Elster,
Elster, yeah.
Elster, yeah,
Yeah.
Elster, and um, I guess I forget her other the woman she's looking for. If like the two of them have strayed from some of their roles that they've been given, and there's been consequences of doing that.
Yep. It's interesting that you bring up the video camera. I feel like this is sort of a tangent, but you brought it up, and now I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah,
Without spoiling anything, I think you get to the end of the game, and it's never very clear about like who even is watching those video cameras. Like, it doesn't
that's
seem like
true.
it's anybody on the stations that you're in. They're just always monitoring you to nowhere, effectively, like to nobody, which is really weird.
Or to be determined in Signalis too. Who knows?
Yeah.
Also, you gotta admit, right? Like the top down view feels like you're watching out of a video camera,
Whoa, that's super interesting. I never thought about that. Ah.
which is weird.
Oh yeah, you
Mhm.
know what? Because yeah, even like they are very consistent in the angle. Because I feel like even
Mhm.
like a Resident Evil game will occasionally give you like a different angle, right? Like it'll be like
Yeah.
looking dead down a hallway or something like that, as opposed to that like top down, so to speak. But yeah, it is always like the angle that you would imagine from a camera. That is true.
Mhm.
Yeah. The only time they deviate is whenever you're doing something that's in front of you. But
Yeah,
on top of
and the
that,
memories.
Yeah.
on on top of that, the reason I bring that up is I know in some sections you can see posters of a character that looks exactly like you but isn't you. And I know there's an elevator. I think this is pretty early game, but it's filled with corpses of replicants that look exactly like you. And imagine having to tackle that realization that either A, this is something that you're supposed to strive to become, or B, you're just as replaceable as everyone else that came before you. And how do you reconcile with like finding your own individuality, your own spark that separates you from the slaughter?
Yeah, I also
Yeah,
have
and
found like when I you come across that elevator, there's certain points where you can interact with objects like and Elsa will make a remark even if it's not like a key item, like when the little targeting reticule isn't over it. But I was like, there is clearly a disturbing pile in this elevator. And I'm like, surely you have something to say. And I think the remark was elevator is broken. I was like, you don't say. I wonder why.
Mhm. It is interesting, like and from an outside perspective, it's easy to sort of transplant like wanting individuality onto a lot of these characters, but the characterization that they act out within the game, it's like I'm not entirely sure how much they want any of that. When Elster sees a bunch of bodies of other Elster replicas, it's not like they're surprised by it. They're like, "Yep, I'm a robot. Or I'm a pseudo robot. They're pseudo robots. They're dead. What you gonna do? That just is." Um, but there are also some notes where like they do give them personalities and like agency in a way that's interesting. So it seems like they're not totally like I don't know, pre-programmed in their thought patterns or whatever. It seems like they've got like some agency in their in how they act and how they interact with each other. Um, but they still seem pretty like aware of what they are as replicas and I guess the system that they exist within.
I guess tangent tangential to what we were currently discussing, do you feel like something pre-programmed, if to go on for long enough, would develop some sort of distinct personality that's different from what where it started? So like say something like a replica, right off the factory line, they're at this state where they do and act according to how they're supposed to. But say after like maybe 50 or 40, 50 like 60 years of just constantly running and having these independent experiences that separate them from their starting core, do you think they would develop some kind of independence or agency from their own programming?
I feel
Yeah,
like they
there's a section in the game that speaks on this, but it's definitely a spoiler.
100%. I mean, I feel like they have to. Like, it's almost like that's part of the programming, which is weird. Um, because it's like if all you wanted was something that started from one place and repeated the same set of actions over and over, you wouldn't make these sorts of replicas. You would make a crane. You'd make like a pneumatic operated crane or something. That's what you do. It'd do one thing. It would do it perfectly the same every time. But what they want is something that interacts with its environment and learns over time. Um, and so it's like it's inevitable that it develops or it's desirable that it develops individuality from other Elster or whatever replica instances, because that's what learning is, right? It's developing a unique set of responses over developed experiences. And it's more like they want to confine that to things which make the job do better and uh, then end up shocked when it turns out that like that learning experience impacts things outside of the mining jobs or the security jobs. And then they have to plan in like how to dispose of units that change too much or
Mm,
change in ways that are not desirable.
that part.
Mm.
There's like a limitation to it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this case of this world too, especially like from what we talked about the memory stuff earlier, like I think they want people to be individual from each other.
Hmm.
Oh, the box. Oh man. Um they want people to be individual to each other, but and the more so like them having no memories is a good thing, right? Because that means that, oh, okay, they're not going to remember what happened in their previous version of themselves, whatever. So that means that they can be more individual. And the time, I guess, the process of learning and all that kind of stuff and getting those memories uncovered ends up encroaching upon that kind of idea of like, oh, they're learning that there's other things inside of them that they're not aware of, and that's not good.
Well, I guess I should ask, in that case, do you think there's any real difference between, say, human sentience and, say, emergent sentience that comes from a machine just living for way too long?
I
Wait,
think like sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to ask if to repeat. I didn't quite understand.
Is is there a difference between robot sentience and human sentience? What is the true, you know, what distinguishes the two, if
Mm.
anything?
I feel like in media like this, it's the question is always like it's never like quite answered, but it's always suggested that one of the key differences between artificial sentience and organic sentience is like the replicas in this game and other artificial sentience has answers to the questions of like their own creation, their purpose. Effectively, they know who created them and why, and they've got rigid lines around that. Whereas it becomes a lot blurrier for the humans or whatever, and they have to develop their own answers to those questions without having concrete answers. And not that like it changes personhood necessarily, but that like that becomes one of the real like dividing lines between those two types of sentience.
I like that
I
answer.
get with that.
I
Yeah.
kind of want to add to that.
Go ahead.
There are also like, when it comes to like humans and people, not everyone is like a monolith either, right? Some people just take um what they can see, what they can see and what they can prove as enough, and that might be like a little vague, but let me put it into perspective. So like someone who doesn't exactly, or someone who like kind of just believes that like a bunch of different scenarios happened in order to create the reality that we now see before us, as an answer, um, are just within like the human race as well. So like the dividing line between that and those people who um, kind of feel as though that there's something more out there, or like there's a different like particular reason as to why we came into being. Um, that brings up like just another side of the argument, that I can see between those two different fractions. The remnants, is that what they're called?
Replicas.
Replicants.
Or yeah,
Replicas.
cuz, yeah.
And
Yeah.
humans.
And just all
Replicas. Yeah, interesting
Replicas.
conversation there about sentience, because it's kind of like sentient. If the border between sentience, or like natural and artificial sentience, is the knowledge of where you came from, then that kind of that's very blurry. When it
Well,
comes
it's
to
almost like
this topic.
there's a line between knowledge of where you came from and belief of where you came from, right? Because like, you're correct that there's a monolith. There are people who do feel more confident in like human origin, and that guides how they view the world. But it still does ultimately come down to like uncertain belief, either based around. It's uncertain is the point. Whereas for a replica, for something manufactured, you have something directly telling you like I saw you constructed. I was the person that constructed you. Here you are now. Here's your origin. Here's the history around it. Um, and so I think that element of belief and uncertainty is really like that's the separating line.
Yeah, it just makes me kind of excited about this topic, because I also think about how like for some people, what if like their parents is enough, right? Like I know where I
Hmm.
came from because my parents, that's the answer for me.
Yeah.
And whatever the story is to their parents is what they would just believe, or like, kind of accept as fact.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of, yeah, would like kind of go to your point as far as like belief versus like having certainty that like the like
Hmm.
down to the last zero. I know exactly how I was
Yeah.
programmed and stuff like that.
Though.
But I
Oh, go
I
ahead,
guess
Jake.
I guess I want to add on top of that is I guess what would imagine a robot who's outlived their purpose, like mission accomplished, but
Hmm.
they're still around. I think at that point that's where the two beings become almost indistinguishable because the machine is then tasked of either just laying down and dying or creating a new purpose for itself.
Right. And we've seen
Hmm.
that in media a lot, right? Where like
Hmm.
that exact situation could cause varying different results,
Hmm.
some of which are sometimes antithetical to their actual purpose too.
Yeah, and now that I think about it more, the belief angle is weird. I definitely started that thinking like, anything artificially constructed would have 100% certainty of its belief. But like that there's a short story that comes to mind. It's part of the book I, Robot. But it's about this, it's about this artificial intelligence that questions the stories of what it's told, right? It invents its own religion effectively. After the humans in its life are telling it, no, you were built this, you are this kind of robot, and it goes, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I'm a prophet. So there's still uncertainty there, right? Like even if you have people telling you with certainty your origin, the intelligence or sentience or whatever, like de facto enables that uncertainty. It lets you question your own origins without concrete answers.
Yeah, the difference between say like destiny or fate versus forging your own path in spite of that.
For sure.
I guess to bring it full circle, how do you think a lot of these story elements and themes interact or change the way you interact with the game itself or how you play the game? Are these things you think about when you play, or do they just become like secondary thoughts and you don't really care?
I think it's nice gift wrapping. Oh, you can go ahead, Tim.
Gift wrapping. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think when we were talking about at the top of like what distinguishes this game from others, like I said before, I don't think it's doing too many things unique, but it has these extra flares of care and stuff like that. And I think that lore and that kind of not on the nose, but this kind of vague, or I want to think of a better word than that, like vague, like ethereal, maybe that's a better word, definition of like identity and self, and what does your past make of you and all this kind of stuff. Everything about this game, like in the presentation, those kind of themes, give me the impression that this was a very, very methodically crafted game, which I appreciate. I see the work and quality that the team put into like putting this together. That all these kind of things speak to, at least to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I agree that it for the most part it feels like really effective, like wrapping around the mechanics and the aesthetics of the game, and less so like if there's a lot of questions that the game wants to raise about individuality, agency, and like developing consciousness, I don't know that really like manifests in the game in any way. Like when I'm playing the game, I'm not at any point thinking like, oh, I'm a robot developing, some individuality here. The game wants me to do this one thing, but I'm going to do this other thing instead. It's just not a core part of like the game loop or the overarching story when you're playing it. You still feel like you're very driven by like this one sort of uncertain MacGuffin of finding this other character that you're after. And so it almost feels like it's ignored, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It
Maybe
feels like partially like you're not fully, like some stuff you embody a character, but in this case, like there's so much you don't know that you can never fully embody who you're playing as, and so those questions of like they don't come up the same way, at least early on, I would say. Yeah.
It's hard to role play when you don't know the character, like all the character's motivations, when there's so much mystery around it. It's like, what am I even doing?
It's very true.
I guess I might have framed that a little too straightforward. Maybe it should be a little more metaphorical. Not metaphorical, but metaphysical. Do you think these elements keep you intrigued and make you actually want to play the game further? Or do they just end up being clutter?
I mean, I'll still go with what the other two said. Still, to be honest, because yeah, it's because it's like the goal, right? When it comes to like any kind of game like this, we're like. I think it changes. It's one of these weird things with this game in particular because there's multiple endings. And
spoilers. No, I'm just playing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you should know that.
And didn't tell me that.
ending. I know, right? That part. I don't know why I don't tell people. Um, and you have to replay the game as well to get the different endings. So there's that element, and so I think because of that, um, the more you replay, the more you begin to start thinking as you play. I guess if that's the best way to put it. Like the more you start to actually like kind of take what you're experiencing and the information that you're being given, and then you start to kind of use that actively in a sense. But I feel like the setup early on, and this is I wrote like some dislikes, so to speak, about, well, not dislikes, but things that I think could have can be considered as far as like improvements or things to consider like doing differently, is like because early on you're so engrossed by the mystery of everything. Um, you're not really thinking in a lot of detail about all the information you're being given. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'm gonna keep going along my path and go to my goal that I've been given, right? Because that's what you do. That's what I've told I should be doing, right? And so you might question some stuff, but it's like at the same time, it's like, oh, it's just okay. Oh, okay. This is weird. This is, I'm putting things together, but it doesn't really affect your way of playing or how you go about approaching anything, because you just don't have enough context and information about the mystery of it all to really like use it in any way that's useful. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that's a tricky thing with something like this is that like at one time it's like what can you do because it's a mystery narrative, and you have to figure out the mystery eventually, so until you do that, like but at the same time that's the hard thing I have to deal with, at least like a first playthrough of the grasp of it, which is the same thing that happens in Near. It's like you don't know what's important and what's not important as far as the information that you're being given, so you don't know what to do with it. It's just information and you try to piece it together, but it's hard to piece it together early on because there's so much you don't know, and you don't know how things connect to each other or not connect to each other. um, which does give me that to this one little point that I had about as far as gameplay wise, that games like this could maybe benefit from, and y'all can let me know what y'all think. But like i I kind of feel like having a way to categorize the information that you obtain, like the letters, the lore, some of the items that have importance, like being able to categorize them or have a way to like in a menu, um, you know, h- show their relationship or like figure it out, so to speak. Like, like those like detective boards or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Or even like in Final Fantasy 16, they have the lore system that you get and you start to piece things together as you gain the information. I feel like that stuff would be like super useful in something like this where it has like a big encroaching mystery, but then it has stories within stories and is also asking you to replay it. um, y-
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really tricky because like I 100% agree. I finished the game, went, what did I just play? Started over or loaded my latest save and just started reading through the notes again. And it's like you go top to bottom and they're so out of order and scattered and like, you get different notes like at, you know, with hours between like related bits of
Also
information.
true. Also true.
So it's like, okay, in this one thing I learned what the Elster robot, what that acronym stands for, and in this other note later I figured out more about what makes them tick, but you're not, there's just so much time. But anyway, yeah, like it's a lot of information dumping, and then at the end, if you remember to go back and do it, you can go back and like try to make sense of it all, but in the moment it is really hard to like, I mean, I think it would take like hours and hours of additional time to like every time you got a new note, revisit all of your previous notes to see if there was like anything useful there. So it's like, on the one hand, I think those are the sorts of things where I really like when a game encourages you to like outside of the game, go grab a piece of like pen and paper and just start jotting down your own little like mind maps or whatever. Those are always like really cool immersive experiences. on the other hand, I think you're right. Like the UI could do a better job of finding ways of like, um, I don't know, more easily connecting these notes together, right? Like even just like having a an information docket that's just like, oh, for this character, here are all the relevant notes. For this location, here are all the relevant notes, and letting you, over time build more context with a little more structure.
I can't wait for MGK to play through blueprints. We'll be having conspiracy boards and everything. That'll be great.
I guess I can agree to the improvement part that the UI element would make things better, but
Yeah.
I don't, I guess, share the same sentiment of y'all about I don't know, with like things that like slowly build up on each other, essentially.
Mm.
Because I think to me that just shows that they how much forethought that they have. I think it's a one thing if like in none of it amounts to anything. And maybe it doesn't because y'all seem to be further than me, but at least when I'm playing through everything that has been like hinted at, even if it might not come in that level or something like that, it does kind of get called back to later on and stuff like that. The only thing that I think was kind of like a misnomer for me, and maybe it will come to, is the importance of names and stuff. No one ever told me to
Mm.
do it, but I know when I was looking through logs and stuff, I was like trying to like memorize some of their codes or like names because I remember one of the in the very first level there's something about like a dossier of all of like I guess notable people. One of it is Alina, the one you're searching for, and then there's like three others, and then one of them said arrested for suspicions of bioresonance. I was like, what the fuck is that? That sounds special. So like I was like, okay, that's Michaela Wong. Let me keep sight of that. Maybe I'll come across. That doesn't amount to anything, or at least like I don't know if you come across unless she comes way late. Because again, I'm in the mines. Unless she comes way late, you never come across a Michaela Wong or like really any, or even I thought there would be certain things like how you have that photo to start off with. Like obviously that's something you instantly put into your inventory box and then never touch again. But I thought, oh, maybe there'd be like a little nod if you like keep it and present it to like the NPCs around. No one ever reacts to it and stuff like that. Or even like I think there's a point where you literally have the ID of one of the NPCs you can come across, like Storch, I believe. And I'm like, I went all the way back because it was out of my way. I went all the way back to her and I was like, hey, I got your ID. You got something to say? And it's just like, nope. So that kind of was
Hmm.
like disappointing. But the other thing is just like narratively speaking, of just like leaving breadcrumbs. To me, that's okay as long as they make sense at some point, because then that just means that you were intentionally planting these nuggets. They don't have to make sense at the moment when you know what they lead to. And I think that makes it more impactful. We can be like, if you were paying attention, because I guess that's what you're saying is like the amount of
Mm.
time for a lot of things it can go out of your mind. And also I'm binging this game. I just started playing essentially on Friday. So for me, maybe it's a little bit more fresher just because I've been going through it, kind of back to back to back. But I think it's kind of nice.
Yeah, and
I'll
like not
agree.
even
It is
necessarily.
good.
Yeah, like not even speaking to like good or bad, just like the experience of going through the information for me and not binging it all in like 3 days or whatever, but sort of spreading it out over a couple of weeks is just that like there's a lot of like getting new notes going. I don't quite, it's like I feel like they're trying to tell me something important here. Some light bulb should be going off and it's not. And I think when I went back and revisited the notes, something I noticed is that there's a lot of like, I don't know, like sameness or uniformity in a lot of things. A lot of the different replica like acronyms are very similar. Star versus Stork versus whatever, Aura versus Adler versus, it's a lot of similar things, and the character models all sort of have this same like Ghost in the Shell, protag sort of look to them. So there's sameness there, and it makes it hard to like intuitively just connect the dots as you're going, where if there's a little more uniqueness to things. But you could also look at that as like sort of an intentional element of the game that like that's what happens when you brush away all the individuality of things, is that they sort of melt together in a formless blob.
True.
I will note that that they do look pretty damn samey, which I guess is a little bit of the limitation of the graphical style and their aesthetic. I mean, I'm sure it's slightly intentional because obviously they're replicants,
Yeah.
but it's also
Right.
like these are based off of human beings, and human beings can look kind of different. So I don't give them that much grace. But yeah, it was hard to like even like Lester or Elster, should I say, looks like they are very samey to I think a detriment of like I don't know, maybe that's intentional, but I feel like they could have been a little bit more differentiated while still having the motif of like, yeah, these are clones and stuff like that. But yeah, they're very samey.
That's a good point. I didn't, because in my head I was like, yeah, it's intentional because they're all replicas, and why would they care about giving them like unique like physical characteristics? But they are supposed to be based on gestalts or humans at some point, so they should have some natural like distinguishing features. Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe they don't take on the physical features of whatever they're like, clone. They're just cloning the neural patterns and not so much like the physical bodies.
Yeah, I am incredibly interested in that element of the game, and that's why I really want to play it. I'm very much waiting to figure out. Well, one of the reasons I want to play is to figure out what's the deal with all the like the gay art, because there's a lot of really sweet, wholesome lesbian fan art of like a bunch of characters, but I'm looking at the gameplay very much. It's like 99% of like what you see.
We're not immersed in the fan art area, right? So that's.
Oh, you talking about fan art? Okay, my bad. I thought it was like in the game. I was like, I ain't seen no lesbian action from what I saw.
No, I was just because it's very sweet and wholesome, and I was like, I don't know how you got that from this game. This game looks upsetting.
It's so there is very like game intended gay romance in there, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. With that, I think spawns a lot of the fan art. I also think the fact that all of the character models, except for like Adler, they're all sort of like female coded replica, models. That most of the characters either look like formless monsters or they look like anime girlfriends, right? Like those are your two options, and that's what
or
if
both.
you draw fan art or both. So that I think it sort of naturally lends itself to that angle of the fan art, but there is a direct like romance plot with some of the characters.
Scott, that is a very good point though about that I didn't think about until you mentioned it, that Adler is the only male character so far, and that feels way too intentional.
Yeah,
I get a lot of 1984 vibes from this game.
Yeah, there's one note early on, I forget what it is, but they're like redacting some old documents, and they're like, we will no longer say redacted. Anybody who whatever is, punishable by however many years. And there's a quote at the end that's like, a perfect world requires perfect language. And it's like, yeah, that's very 1984.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. There we go.
Were there any other gameplay thoughts that people had? Because I did want to talk about some of the other, what do you call it? Like the inspirations that show up in the game, obviously.
Yeah, I was going to start segueing into like the cultural aspects that kind of bleed into the game. But yeah, we can go ahead and go to that.
I guess last bit on like gameplay thoughts. I already shared this in like the text chat, but I thought it was really cool, and also I'm surprised I didn't catch on earlier how your like running mechanics and your flashlight both like impacted how much the enemies could detect you or not. I think that would have made the game very different in the early segments if I realized I could more stealthily sneak around enemies if I just kept my flashlight off and walked slowly.
I'm surprised that you didn't pick up on that. I saw that in the channel, but then for me, when I got the flashlight, because I think it's Ash Holish, but when you first get it, you can't leave the room unless, which I think is stupid. If the door is right in front of you and you turn off the light, you can't be, oh my God, I can't see. You're right in front of the damn door. But whatever, game logic. But you have to have the light on, and then maybe because you killed the enemies outside, but I was always being like, I also had picked up from the chat before I started playing. It's like, oh, enemy, I ran out of enemies, bullets for this boss, stuff like that. So I had already picked up. Oh, I got to be extra
Yeah.
conservative. So I wasn't shooting anything. I was always pretty much kiting and moving around. So I was
Yep.
always having to dodge them. So when I come out with the flashlight, as soon as you come out, boom, I'm caught because my light is on. So I was like, oh, okay, so that's how it is. So I feel like they were trying to like teach you that way. But if you killed them before you got to the room, then you wouldn't have that nod.
Yeah. The running one absolutely was like my bad because there is a note early on in the game about like I forget exactly what it says, but it effectively is telling you like when you run, you make noise, people hear you.
Yeah, everybody
Um,
can hear you
the
pretty much.
the flashlight one I felt was tricky because it's like once they introduced the mechanic that like some doors won't open without it, I was like, well, I'm just gonna leave my flashlight on the whole time because I never want to get confused that a door's not opening for some reason, you know. So I didn't even think to turn it off. I just kept walking into rooms and thinking like, oh, this is a harder level, so the androids must be like more attuned to aggro me or something.
Yeah, the flashlight was interesting. Like, at least
Mhm.
that's the thing. Like, they're simple, but you do have these things that they don't. It's probably little from I think a mechanical standpoint, but they do make them feel they lend themselves to the horror element, right? The fact that they
Yeah.
will go on you when you walk too much, and then a lot of the placement. A lot of times, like there's some that you have to be like pixel perfect with your like very
Hmm.
perfect diagonal line to like go through two different enemies, otherwise like walk through, otherwise you're gonna be in that radius and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting that given how a lot of them are stationary or they have the obviously like the Metal Gear Solid one simple patrol patterns and stuff like that, these little elements like the light, the footsteps, and all that kind of stuff work out. And even I don't know if people picked up, but like I still don't know what it's called, but like the one area where you have to like get the elevator to work and stuff like that. Um, there's one room that I believe is the shower room, and I guess they are trying to imply that it's misty. But I had noticed in that one particular room, all of the enemies in there they're very narrow in sight. Like you can get by with a lot
Mm.
around them. It's only if you run that they really come after you, but I didn't quite notice. I was like, there's an enemy like right there. And I always test it. I'm like, all right, let me walk and then fuck around and find out. And I was able to walk past it and I was like, oh, I guess because it's like misty or something. Because I did see like, it is there like in the color a little bit, but I was like, oh, I guess
Yeah.
they can't see well in the mist, which I think was a nice little touch that they don't even really like
Mhm.
lampshade, but it's there.
Yeah. No, I think the flashlight is one of my favorite mechanics just because it's such a like in a horror game, the flashlight is one of those few things that gives you comfort, and this game makes it a double whammy bad time because it like one, it takes up an inventory slot, you only get 6 of them, and two, it makes enemies like detect you more easily. So it's a really good like interesting balance of like, you know, making a tough choice in a horror game.
Yeah, I actually kind of I dislike the flashlight a little bit because from the moment that you get it, it fundamentally changes gameplay in a negative way for me. I feel like
Mm.
because
Huh.
from henceforth you do start having dark rooms. They're not always there, so then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well I hate doubling back, so I'm just gonna always have the flashlight on me. But
Yep.
one of the things I ran into is like towards I'm assuming getting past the halfway point. I got a lot of stun rods because I'm a pacifist. So I'm like, all right, let me
Yeah.
start using stun rods because they're actually pretty effective. They can do crowd control. Cool. Now I'm at this point where it's like, all right, I have to have the flashlight because they're both going to the same slot. It would be nice if I
Yeah.
could equip the stun rod as a weapon, but you can't. So then I'm like, all right, well, especially like that one horrendous room that I was in. That was the first thing I
Yeah.
was doing. There's a bunch of enemies in here. Let me use my
Mhm.
stun rod so I can maybe try to arc them. And it's also the stun rod is good because even the bigger enemies, it can usually take out in one hit all the same, like even like the shielded
Yeah.
ones. But I'm like, I can't have the rod and the flashlight at the same time. So I have to like have the flashlight like bait an attack, go out the way, immediately switch, and then do that, and then like hope
Mhm.
that I have positioned everybody else good enough to get it. It was just that type of thing where it's like you always have to have the flashlight, and then it's also because of that, it's making all the other tools more cumbersome to have because you like that's like you said, the slots are limited. So then I'm ended up using like the thermite and the stun rod less because I pretty much feel like I always have to have the flashlight. I kind of wish it was more so like a gimmick for that one particular area and then never done again, to make everything else more worthwhile. But I feel like it just kind of like the balance skews once you get it in a way that I don't appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, like, with a horror game, I'm always I go back and forth on like when the game mechanics make things like quote unquote less fun or more cumbersome. Is that a horror game doing its job right to like make this experience like horrible? Um, but I definitely I as much as I like the flashlight, I ran into the same thing where I was just like, "Ah, it's stupid. Like I shouldn't have to switch between the flashlight and the stun gun. I've got two hands. I don't need to use the gun. I should be able to hold the flashlight and use the stun rods or whatever like in my weapon hand. So that one felt a little bit like, okay, maybe I'm not as excited about that one.
They're great points.
Also, there is the photo module thing. You get that, and that was very
Yep.
gimmicky because like not only do you get it,
Oh, the
and
intro
like
one.
I'm thinking, yeah, like where we're at right now, that's what you use it for, right? Is to memorize that pattern. But I had thought that it would like come into handy more often because it's a whole module. But you get that, and not only is you never use it again, pretty much, but you only use it for exactly one image. All those other images are useless. They kind of tease the revolver, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you really don't use it. So that kind of felt like a little bit of an underdeveloped, equipment piece.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like, do you actually have to use it? Because I think for that puzzle, I was able to just draw it down on a piece of paper and then like recreate it in the machine. I didn't need a item for it.
Yeah, that's the like, fourth wall breaking.
Yeah,
But if you want to do it like in
Right.
world, that would be the way. Yes, I guess,
it's
yeah.
weird.
By that logic, you didn't even need it at all. Yeah, now
You
that you
didn't need
mention it.
it.
Yeah.
You know, all modern consoles have screenshotting features, and you can always do that on a PC. So like, even if you don't
Hmm.
have paper, it's definitely a weird. And maybe there is. I've only beaten the game once, but it's like I kept looking for like parts of the game that were gonna like make that a required item or would come back in an interesting way, or like you were saying before, being able to like take a picture and show it to an NPC or interact with it in the world, and it didn't come back around. So if I end up finding something with that later, or if that exists later, I'm sure I'm gonna think it's like brilliant or something. Right now, it feels useless.
Yeah, I
Like
didn't really. Yeah, it's the literal MacGuffin. That's
this,
useless.
it's kind of giving when we played through mouthwashing, like kind of how the oh my gosh, what was it? The barcode reader. Like it feels kind of similar to that. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is kind of useful for like one specific thing. And in some places they kind of stretch the definition of its use.
Yes.
And like it doesn't quite feel like it's supposed to be, like it doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, sounds like there are a couple of items in Signalis feel that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ooh.
I keep talking gameplay mechanics and stuff all day, So if if we need to tangent to like the cultural stuff, Tess, we should go ahead and do that.
Oh, I
Speaking of
guess.
tools, I just came across one enemy that is completely immune to the stun rod, apparently, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I finally start to use it, and now I can't even use it."
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I was, on the cultural standpoint of things, there's a lot of stuff that that has flew over my head, obviously, I think, because the the team is a German team,
Mm-hmm.
and things were translated, but then there's a lot of like a heavy German language used in the game, um, especially in some of these like cutscene moments where they show things that pop up on the screen, and it's like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let me go look that up real quick, kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that like, either I looked it up real quick or it just kind of like flew over my head. But I did get the feeling that this was like Soviet era Germany,
Mm,
where it was based on the propaganda, the
hmm
general feeling of everything, the control heaviness of it, that kind of speaks to that era. And then there obviously is that kind of like retrofuturism kind of thing going on. So it's like, what if, this part of this culture got flung into space, and then it had these other, this society, it was like a mixed cultural thing. So there's obviously Chinese, there's Japanese people, there's German people. You see the different languages pop up in different areas on occasion. um, so I definitely like picked up on some of those things, like, oh, this is a very mixed cultural society, but also very heavy on the German cultural influence. Um, which I guess just speaks to the themes in particular. But I know there's a lot of other smaller details that I have not picked up on just from the naming and the word usage.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're going through the game and they're, like you're saying, they're displaying like the Chinese or Japanese characters, and the German blurbs here and there. And when I got to the end and realized that, oh, this was made by a German team, like I was like, so in the German version of the game, does everything look the same, or for the German words, do they obscure it in some other way? Because as an English speaking audience, it felt almost like intentional that they were trying to obscure what some of these like flashing things were trying to get at, that you had to like pause or go quickly look it up. It's extra effort to like piece it together. But if you already spoke that language, would something be different? Would it make would it change your impression of it, or would in other translations would they change how it looked to give the same effect?
The devs have a post in the Steam forums, like one of their
Mhm.
pinned threads, that they had said they developed this game always with English and German like meant to be intertwined.
Mm,
So I guess, yeah, it wasn't like they made it in German first and then translated it. It was kind of like, this is still like, in a sense, the original version. So I guess, yeah, all that stuff is intentional rather than like unintended consequence or stuff like that.
yeah. And maybe to what Tim was saying about like the in-universe world feeling very integrated between cultures, like maybe it's not flashes of a different language. It is just there is some sort of super amalgamated language in this retro future that all these characters mix together. And for the in-game characters, it all just makes sense.
Yo, that sounds wild, but you might be right. That's funny. Wow.
Something that I noticed sort of while we're talking about this, maybe this will amount to nothing, but they every now and again they would flash like a thing that's like this page left intentionally blank. Did anybody
Oh yeah.
make sense of what those sections were for? Like all it reminded me of was like taking tests in school and you'd get to like the last page on like a standardized test and they'd have one of those or something. Um, but I couldn't. I kept trying to like connect it back to the game and going like I don't know what to do about this.
I mean, registration pages.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Registration or the complaints? Or yeah, you talking about those like forms that were scattered throughout or something else?
I'm talking about like in the game, you would get like flashes of it would just be like red text that would say like this page left intentionally blank. And it'd be during those sections where it's like flashing a lot of things at you, like here's a quick flash of a character and then a German word and then a Japanese word, and then last it would end with this page left intentionally blank. So like not
Oh,
not any of the notes within the game. But some of the cutscenes, I guess, would end with a little blurb like that.
I guess I wasn't paying attention enough. I mean, there
Listen,
is a motif of like diaries and stuff too, right? So maybe
Mhm.
that's something of like signaling there's a disturbance. I mean, I think the whole thing overall, like the with all the images, is meant to be disturbing, letting you know that something's not right, and then they're for like that's a regular form of like the psychological analysis, or what is it, the personality stabilization of like, does this person need a diary or not? I think it said most of them
Mm,
do. Like I
yeah,
said, Adler definitely need a diary, or else he about to become a school shooter.
yeah.
But for some of them, they say like, oh, they don't need it. So I think maybe that's kind of harkening back to that of like, I don't know, there's nothing to say, or you're discombobulated, that kind of thing. That would be my guess. I need to look back and actually pay attention to that more.
It sounds like a perfect place to leave hidden text. I'm not gonna lie.
Like if you took a screenshot and like changed the contrast, you would find something.
Yeah,
That'd be so cool.
but I mean, well, yeah, I feel like this game encourages external work beyond what the game provides in terms of mechanics. Right? There's a lot of like flashing images and cutscenes that it's like, oh, if you blink, you miss it type stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were plenty of Easter eggs or even lore content hidden with either within the files or within the game itself that can be, recovered through like screenshots or recordings.
Very true. Very true. We're gonna have to skim through this YouTube video.
I know, right? Because that's one thing, like as a player, right? Like, or anyone who's like watching a movie or playing something like this, like a cutscene, like when there's like flashing images, like you're just SOL, like you might see it, it might not, and then you have to like go watch a recording later to like go like step through it. So it's like kind of have to rely on some kind of recording of it to like actually see like what did I just miss? Because I'm not going to see it again.
Yeah. Yeah, and these sorts of, especially with like movies and stuff, I always have that I'm just not gonna pause things to go like translate it in the moment immediately. Because if I do, I'm gonna take myself out of like the mood or the atmosphere or whatever I'm currently in, and that's gonna ruin it. And then I inevitably forget to go check up on it later. So I always wonder how effective they are at actually like at the end of the day communicating any kind of information and not just being like, this is, a thing you can do to make things feel like creepy or unsettling.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Yeah. It definitely adds to the mystery atmosphere.
It is 12:31, so I'm not sure if we want to wrap this up so that we could have our meeting, or if you want to just keep this going.
Well, yeah, we do try to target these for an hour, so maybe we could get to it if there's like a ending question or something like that.
Oh, we're almost at 2 hours. I'm not gonna lie, but I guess how did it make you feel? Usually, those are good ending questions. They're nice, sweet, simple, not too in depth, and you can't ramble on forever because no one cares that much.
Oh, that feels targeted. How did it make me feel? I felt frankly confused. I enjoyed it, but I was confused the whole time.
That's so valid.
Rating confused out of 10.
So valid.
I mean, I haven't finished it yet, so that's also like I felt like this is a good experience. Like I enjoyed playing through this. Like I'm definitely gonna like finish this, post this discussion and stuff like that. I it just creates a world that I was into. I don't know if it'll have lasting power, but while I'm going through in this playthrough and stuff like that, like it was never like me at the edge of my seat, but it had a pretty good pacing and breadcrumbing of things where I wanted to keep going through it. I applaud this a lot for being a simple game. This is very much like the PS1 era design and stuff like that. But yeah, like they just have everything presented in a good, thoughtful manner to where like even though for the most part you haven't seen anything new, it's all done really well. So I feel good about the game so far. I guess if there's any like really loose threads, like some of y'all are implying that it might be a little disappointing, but it's been a decent ride. I'd actually hope, it seems like there is room for them to make franchise this or something like that, whether it's like kind of like an anthological. I don't know if that's the actual word, but like I don't think they necessarily need to continue with like the player character that we have, but they have a whole universe quite literally and other stuff. So maybe it's something where, you know, you can see someone on a different planet or something like that. Like uh I would be looking forward to seeing more from this world.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I do agree that they've done enough work with the background of everything that they could have more stories in this universe. Because it's even some of the stuff that I watched with a couple other endings, like there's a lot of stuff that they don't get into that they just kind of talk about on on the surface level. But it's like, wait, what? Like, there's what is if this means this and this mean this, and it's like they never get into it, right? So there's definitely a lot more that could be talked about. Um, but yeah, I guess me personally as well. Like I think one, I put this game. I haven't played. I knew about this game when it came out, but just never bothered playing it because I don't play a lot of like horror games in general. So I was like, oh, we'll get to it eventually. So it's nice to be able to play through this and talk about it with people um, as we're going about it. So yeah, I do think is worth the praise from that has gotten through the years. It's also worth the praise that like it's only primarily made by two developers who pulled this off, which is
Oh,
also
really? I didn't know it was that few.
I think so. Yeah. Was it Rose Engine is the studio?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, considering all the art and how good it looks and how detailed everything is as far as the story and how things are connected, you know, making it a replayable, story is one, of course, like good for playtime, but also like it's very hard to do. Um, and they do a really good job at all the mechanics and pieces in the game come together really well. So I think that's just really impressive and a good reminder for us indies, like what's possible. And then yeah, I think the last part too is just like the part that pulled me along a little bit was the motifs, I think, or like the inspirations. Because yeah, it's a pretty slow play in some ways as for you putting things together, but seeing like the Silent Hill motifs, the King in Yellow being mentioned, and some of these other like cosmic horror stories from years ago that are also like in the game in some way, or where they're like, okay, I know there's something here and I want to see where it's going to go, kind of feeling, knowing what those stories are about. Um, so I think they did a really good job at keeping that intrigue, at least for some of us. And yeah, I'm glad we checked it out.
Yeah, I'm really hyped for this game. I was excited to well, I didn't get to play it, but I will be this is 100% on my to play list. And I will probably in like a month or two just flood the server with my thoughts eventually. I'll just be in game club being like, "Oh my god, I understand all of it now. I understand it now."
I understand now. That's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to. It looks like we'll be playing something a little bit more lighter for the next club because this is so so much. Oh
Yeah,
man.
we got a well, granted, it's a light game, but it's a Souls like, so
Yay. Nah, at least
yeah.
I've played aggro games before, and at least the one thing I give them credit for is they do have difficulty scaling, which is the whole thing that I just say about Souls. Like difficulty is subjective, and if you want it to be hard, cool, but your hard is not everybody else's hard. My grandma cannot play, well, God rest her soul, but she cannot play Dark Souls no matter what. You can be like, oh, just tough through it. She can't beat Dark Souls. Now you
That's
can make
true.
it better to where a little easier to for her it's the greatest challenge of her entire existence, but for everybody else it's like, oh yeah, I could beat this in like 3 hits, and it's still, are if it's that way for them, aren't you still fulfilling the philosophy of the game? You know, that's just me, but that's a talk for a different time.
I think that concludes Game Club for today. Right now the timer does say 2 hours and 6 minutes and 50 seconds, just about. Just so that we can sync up the video with the audio near the end.
Yeah, we'll have to cut off some of the beginning because there's a lot of
Yeah.
just dead time. But yeah.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Cool. Yeah, it was a good time. See y'all later.
See you.
All right, y'all. Good stuff. Good stuff.